everybody. It's me, Natalie Diaz, and I am here with Miss Lauren Oak. Hi, Lauren. How are you today?
Good. I'm good.
Let's be like real podcast people. Hi, Lauren. Great to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
Listen, it's our pleasure. I'm glad that we literally could be lighthearted because today we actually have a really heavy episode.
Oh.
So yeah, it's interesting. So we got, if you guys don't know out there of how we find our guests, we basically just put a call out into the twin world, right? Through Twiniversity, through our Instagram, through everything. And we say, like, if you have a story that you want to share, or if you have advice that you think could be great for other people, but I really want to make sure that we have a nice variety of topics for you guys. And so we got this one response back from this mom, Alex, who actually lives in Europe. And so she's taping this. I believe she was in Germany while we were taping this. But it was fascinating because Alex has an eating disorder.
Oh.
And so now her 20s are getting bigger, and she has basically been really struggling with her eating disorder through her pregnancy. And now that they're here, and it's so interesting because it really goes to show that it is a disease.
Yeah.
Like mental illness is a disease.
Yes.
And no matter like what people say, like, oh, you could get over it or whatever, it's like just because you can't see something doesn't mean that they're not struggling.
Exactly. Yep.
Which truthfully is something that I've taught the kids since they were little, right? Because the thing is like, if let's say somebody was mean or somebody was like abrupt or somebody was like super rude, even when they were little, I would always say, you don't know what happened right before now.
Yes, you don't know what they're going through.
Exactly. And I try to give everybody, all of humanity, the benefit of the doubt, because sometimes you're going to meet somebody like Alex that is really struggling, but is certainly not going to wear it on their sleeve.
Okay.
It's another episode that we went a little bit long. And I also realized that this is one of the first episodes where I barely speak.
Ooh.
Lauren, I didn't know what to say, and usually I'm full with questions, and I'm going to tell you before you listen to this, like trigger warning, level 10, if you know somebody that has any eating disorders or any type of mental illness, you may want to consider not listening to this episode. And I will still love you, and Lauren will still love you. Will you still love them, Lauren?
Yes, always.
I don't want to speak for you because you're right there. So I don't have to speak for you. But it's really, really heavy, and it's very serious. And I was jaw drop. And if you go to the YouTube video, you'll see that I am like wide-eyed, and I don't know what to say. Wow. And it happens like a bunch on the podcast where I want to figure out how to like teleport because I just want to like hold the guest.
Aww. Aww.
And so when we were taping this, she was actually at her sister's house. So she went to her sister's house for some extra support and just some sissy time. And it's just a lot. So I don't even know what to say other than like trigger warning. But if if you're out there and you're suffering from with an eating disorder, despite whatever type it is, like really listen to Alex's story, but she's still in the eye of the storm.
Oh, that's rough. It's hard.
That was really a lot. And it's just like the toll that it takes on her family and just her health. And then it's like, I was worried. I was like, how now that the kiddies are eating solids, like, do you feel like limiting their solids but it's just unbelievable. So are you ready for kind of a heavy episode?
I guess, yeah. I mean, thanks for the warning.
All right. You got a warning, but I have so much pride that she did this, that she spoke to us. Because honestly, Lauren, that everybody's got a story, but not everybody's willing to tell it.
Yeah. I mean, it's brave of her to talk about it.
I can't believe it, but seriously, you gotta listen to Alex and just, take note that you may not want to have the family around or play this on the car stereo because it's rough. It's really, really rough. So yeah. So without further ado, guys, here's Alex. Hello. Thank you so much for being a part of this. And I can't believe that you are speaking to me on a break when you could be in a bubble bath getting a cup of coffee and you're choosing to play with us. So thank you so much, Alexandra.
No worries. It's
Oh,
just a treat that my sister's putting my twins to bed for me. So,
I
that's my
love that.
holiday.
Oh, that is definitely any day that somebody could take your twins from you is kind of
I
a
know.
so
I
yes.
know. It's
How
amazing.
old are your 20s now?
They're 10 and a half months.
Oh wow. So they're still teeny
Yeah.
tiny.
They're still teeny tiny. Yeah. One's a lot tinier than the other.
Oh my gosh. So tell
But
us a little bit about your 20s.
yeah, so their names are Oscar and Felix, and they're 10 and a half months, and they are non-identical boys, obviously. Um, they look very different, actually. One looks like my sister's little boy, and he's blonde, chubby cheeks, super cute. And Oscar, the other one, is much smaller and like a little elf. We had him dressed up as an elf at Christmas, and he
Oh my
rocked the
God.
part. I think I sent you a photo actually of them,
Yes, we do. We
wearing
have.
their two elf costumes. Um, yeah, so like Felix is starting to crawl, not quite there yet. He's got lots of teeth. Oscar's got no teeth, not trying to crawl, but he likes his food. Oscar loves his food. Felix is a bit fussier, but yeah, they're super cute, and I still can't quite believe that they're here, and I have twins, and yeah, it's pretty amazing. Hard work, but I came up to Edinburgh last night on a very late train, and it was delayed. So they slept on the train, but they didn't sleep when we got here at like 2 in the morning. So I basically had like 4 hours sleep. So I'm a bit like delirious.
Oh, okay. I have a question for you. Do you know that where did you get your son's names from?
So so kind of the reason why I'm on this podcast is obviously about eating disorders and like my journey here and my journey as a mother. And I really didn't believe that I was going to be able to have children.
Mm,
So I had, as kind of one of my motivations for getting better, I had like a boy's name and a girl's name, like
mhm.
on my phone. Um, so I had Felix as one of them, and I had another girl's name, which was Willow. Um, but I obviously didn't contemplate twins. So I didn't have a second boy's name. So Felix was always going to be my boy's name because it means happy in Latin, slightly geekily. But yeah, I just thought like I just want my little, it would make me so happy if I have a little boy. Um, and then the other one, we were going to call him Leo actually.
Mm,
And but we had Oscar as another. It's just quite soft. I didn't know any other
yeah.
Oscars. It was quite like gentle, but it didn't sort of like have this personality attached to it in my head. Um, but we put Leo first, and then he came out, and I was sat there in the C-section in the room, and he
Wow.
was on my chest, and I was like, he's not a Leo, he's an Oscar.
Oh, I
We
love
were
their
like, okay,
names.
fine.
It's so interesting because I don't know if you know this, but their names are the characters in a very famous United States television show from the 70s.
Oh, oh
And
wow, no, I did not know that.
they were roommates, Felix and Oscar. They were roommates
Oh
that lived together
wow.
because they both got a divorce from their wife. And so they lived
Oh
together.
no.
And so the show is called Odd Couple.
Oh
Is
wow, I should look that up.
You
That sounds
really should.
cool.
It's that's really fantastic. It really is a very iconic show here. And so for
Oh
anybody
wow.
listening, you're probably too young, but I remember like it was still in reruns when I was little, so it's pretty old, but it was such a great show about like the brotherhood and how they stuck together, and even though that they were polar opposites, they still found the common ground and were so supportive of each other. It's a really great
Oh,
show. So yeah, so
oh, I should definitely
definitely.
watch that.
Oh my gosh, that's so cute. And Felix definitely seems to be becoming a very popular boy's name here in the States too. So that's
Okay, they're
awesome.
both very unusual here. Yeah,
It's beautiful.
but
Beautiful
thank
boys
you.
names. Oh my gosh. So yes. So I when we received all the applications of the people that wanted to be on the podcast, I'm going to be very honest with you and no offense to anybody else, but you were the first one that I was like, "Oh my God, I have to talk to her." So we've had discussions about during pregnancy about nutrition, but we have never been fortunate enough to find somebody who was willing to speak to us about having an eating disorder during pregnancy. And I don't think it's as unusual as people might suspect. And people might not have like a like a diagnosed eating disorder, but there are definitely a lot of people that have either body image issues and have some kind of food issue. So I was so excited to talk to you, and genuinely I really appreciate just getting your insight on this whole thing. So yeah, give us a little bit of the backstory about when you developed an eating disorder and how this affected your pregnancy. And did you tell the doctors? Like, I'm dying to kind of dive into your
Yeah.
once again.
Well,
Thank
this
you.
is why I wanted to talk about it, because I felt very alone during my journey to pregnancy, and then during my pregnancy, and then afterwards. And I think mental health generally is something that's still a very still a stigma.
Absolutely.
And I still very much believe that mental health is a medical condition. It's an illness. If you had cancer, you take medication, you'd be treated, and you would not, I mean, you wouldn't be so embarrassed or have such a stigma around saying that you had it. Mental health is, especially as a mum, it's a real taboo, and I think the secrecy makes it worse. It perpetuates the illness. But yeah, so basically, I developed my eating disorder, so it's anorexia. I developed it when I was about 16, so during kind of our first big exams in the UK, our GCSEs, and I've had lots of therapy, and I'm not entirely sure exactly how it started, but I've kind of pinned down a few things which I think it kind of developed as a result of. And I think I was feeling of lack of control, so it was kind of a way of controlling things that felt very much at sea. I really had a huge lack of self-confidence. I had real issues at home. Like, my mum had really severe depression and was really struggling with her mental health, and I was having to deal with that and look after her. And so it was a cry for help, because I didn't know how to get her help. And it was a way of showing people that I was good at something, because I didn't believe I'd get good results. I was in a very high pressured all-girls school, and I think my eating disorder was my way of coping. It was a way of numbing my feelings as well, and it worked. I mean, it started off as kind of a benign, oh, I'll just lose a bit of weight, and people noticed, and I got sympathy, and people noticed I was, before I'd been telling people about my mum and her issues, and before exams, I'd had real upsetting, traumatizing incidents, but no one listened to me, and my friends didn't want to know. But as soon as I started getting ill myself, people actually started to sit up and listen. And actually, I got doctors involved, and my mum got treatment, and she got medication. And, my mum then started to take care of me because I was ill. And, I was seen as something like, I was the one who was good at dieting. I was, and then I obviously wanted, with my personality, wanted to be the best at that. So then I ended up in hospital for the last year at school as an inpatient, because I needed to be the best. It wasn't okay. I couldn't just settle at being skinny and giving people a scare. My eating disorder wouldn't let me rest until I was at the lowest possible weight I could be in hospital, and showed everyone I could do it. And then in my head, it was like, okay, I'll get better. But obviously that's a scary place to be, because the more you spiral, the more medically you become very, there's lots of experiments. There was a Minnesota experiment where they took lots of, I can't remember how many men, and they essentially put them in a starvation experiment, made them lose lots of weight very rapidly. And their minds changed, their brains changed. They became very irrational towards food, and it chemically alters you. It becomes a physical illness.
Of course.
You're controlled by it, and that's what happened. And then, to cut a long story short, I mean, I never fully recovered. I used it as a coping mechanism, have done ever since.
Okay.
And I never got. After hospital, I was as a child in an inpatient unit, and then I was discharged to adult services, and the support isn't there.
Of course.
So I just learned to deal with it, and I was kind of a coping. I put on a front. I didn't want to talk about it. I kind of did it in secret.
Mm-hmm.
And there were times where I, on the face of it, looked better. But sometimes there were the times I struggled the most. And, I felt like I, I think my biggest thing is I've never felt confident enough to occupy my body and take up space. And I think that's something I'm only starting to realize as a mum, and starting to, I realize how much I'm clutching on my old habits and, exercise and dieting. And I'm realizing it's because I just don't feel like I'm enough. I don't feel like I'm a good enough mum. I don't feel like, I feel irresponsible for bringing them into this world, for what I might do to screw them up. And I feel that if I'm bigger and I'm strong, then that's kind of who I have to be. And if I'm struggling, no one's going to take me seriously if I'm not actually unwell. And that's just not true. But it's only through really wanting to get better for my babies that I've really, really, really started to, go, right, this is it. This is why I'm speaking now, because I'm like, I want to kick this, or I at least want to get to a position where, I'm managing it so I'm not detrimenting my children.
Yeah.
And essentially I didn't think I'd ever have children, because I never got my periods back regularly, even when I got pregnant.
Okay.
And it was super stressful. It took us about a year to get pregnant. I mean, actually, in the scheme of things, it wasn't, because I was having irregular periods and my cycles were very long. It seemed like a lot longer. But it was a total surprise when I was pregnant, because me and my husband were just, and I think the more stressed I was, the harder it was.
Mm-hmm.
And that just really, it was such a stressful time. And every time my period came, I just felt like it was never going to happen. I didn't have any belief in myself. And it was scary, because I always thought, right, I'm going to get pregnant and this is going to kick it. This is going to be the motivation. But it wasn't.
Yeah.
And that was really scary. And that shows how much it had taken over my mind, that, my husband could be really, really upset, and he could see me restricting food, or he could see me over exercising. And I could see that he was upset and stressed, and I couldn't do anything about it. I couldn't eat that extra piece of toast. I couldn't not go for that extra 5 miles run. I just couldn't. And I know that I was hurting him, and I know that I was jeopardizing my chances. But, because I genuinely believe like I'd already screwed my body up, I was too scared to face that by getting healthy. So rather than giving myself the best chance, because this isn't something talked about, I couldn't find any information on people with eating disorders who had got pregnant. I thought, right, I've done it. I haven't had periods for X amount of time. My periods are irregular. I'm probably never going to have kids. And so I'm too scared to face up to that. And so I want to stay ill. So at least I've got a reason for it. I don't have to face up to that fact, which is totally irrational, because I would never know if I wasn't going to give myself the best possible chance. And obviously, I also thought, I don't know if I'm going to be able to kick this, and I don't want to bring my children up in a household with mental health problems, especially if I had girls. And I didn't feel like I deserved it. I felt like I can't be a mum, and I just think that's not true. I think people with mental health illnesses can actually be the best mums. And I think just because you struggle doesn't mean that you shouldn't bring a child into this world. It's about how you manage it and whether you're seeking help. And I think the way I've been treated during pregnancy I've not been made to feel that. I've been made to feel like I'm a danger to my children at points.
Really?
I had a severe relapse. Yeah, I had a severe relapse after I gave birth.
Okay.
I lost a hell of a lot of weight, much lighter than I was. I mean, I got to some of my lowest weights ever.
Really? Post-pregnancy?
Yeah, I mean,
Did you breastfeed?
Yeah. So I had a postpartum hemorrhage, and I also had something called an ileus, which is where your intestines get blocked, really.
Okay.
That's probably something to do with my eating disorder. And also being a twin mum, like I was carrying twins, suddenly the pressure was taken off and my bowels didn't react very well. Essentially, no one really knows.
Okay.
But that happened first. And it was the day after I gave birth. Everything was going really well. I was going to be discharged early. I'd had a really, really smooth C-section. I'd had a really smooth pregnancy, actually. And then suddenly I felt really, really, really faint, really sick, really dizzy, and I fainted. And I was immediately told I hadn't eaten enough because eating disorder was all over my notes. And so I was treated like I wasn't eating enough, and everyone was trying to feed me. And I was basically like, I can't eat because I really felt ill. I was really, really bloated, so uncomfortable. And people were my husband even tried to force feed me because he was like really scared that, and I suddenly felt this huge guilt, but I was also really scared because I was like, I feel like I'm going to die.
Yeah.
And it was only after I fainted the second time, and I was just sick everywhere, all over the babies. I'd been breastfeeding. My husband had no idea what to do in terms of feeding. They told him just to get on with it. He didn't have any bottles, any milk.
Yeah.
I totally abandoned the babies. I totally switched off. And that's how he knew that I was ill, because he knew that I just checked out. And then finally, people took me seriously, took me down for an X-ray, and realized that my intestines were basically totally blocked, and I wasn't digesting any food. And that's why I fainted. And
Yeah.
but then even after that, I was treated like it was because of my eating disorder, because I, messed up my internal systems. That's why. And even the surgeon who performed on me said, it's nothing to do with what I did. I didn't touch your bowels or your intestines. Like, it's because you've got a history of an eating disorder. And then I didn't get enough, I wasn't able to eat solid food, but I had to ask myself for nutrition drinks, which was really difficult. And when I finally got prescribed them, no one gave me them. And so I had to get my husband to go out to get the nutrition drinks. And it was just like, for me, someone with an eating disorder who was really struggling to actually ask to eat, it seemed like no one cared. It seemed like no one was taking me seriously. And so I basically, after a week or so, I really got into a bad state because, everything I put in place, like I'm going to eat regularly, I'm going to do this, it all just fell apart. And then I ended up having a postpartum hemorrhage. And then I ended up losing a lot of weight because of that. I had 2 blood transfusions, was in hospital for a while. And then after that, essentially my experience as a twin mum is people are very much like, don't breastfeed. You won't be able to breastfeed. No one breastfeeds. It's too much toll on your body. Why would you bother? And I was desperate to breastfeed. And I felt like people were like, you've had a postpartum hemorrhage, you've had an ileus, and you're a twin mum. You're already on the thin side. Don't breastfeed. And I was desperately trying to breastfeed, and they were trying to stop me, and they were saying, your body's, but I wasn't getting any support. And I was super proud of the fact that I was breastfeeding, and it was going really well, and I was bonding with my babies. But the social workers were coming around, and they were basically, trying to give me top ups, make me do top ups. They weren't, supporting me. I was really trying to do the tandem feed. It was really sore. I couldn't get the position right. And I knew that it would help me if I could have someone just to support me with that. But they didn't provide any of that. They just told me, don't bother. And even my husband was like, make your life easy for yourself. Why are you bothering?
Yeah.
And I was just thinking, this isn't for an eating. And people were trying to also insinuate I was doing it for calorie burning reasons. And I was like, I genuinely am not. Like, I want to do this for my babies. And I never thought I'd get pregnant, let alone be able to breastfeed. This is just a miracle.
Of course.
Like, when my milk came in for the first time, I was like, oh my goodness me, my body is just a miracle. And
look at that.
but obviously breastfeeding twins really does drain you. And I wasn't able to eat enough. And I was ravenous all the time. But the more ravenous I was, the more I was unable to eat, because the more scared I was of putting food into my mouth, because I was scared that, because I was ravenous, I was scared of honoring my hunger, because I was scared that I would go over the top and put on loads of weight. And I couldn't think to myself, I'm ravenous because I'm burning a lot of energy. No one could really tell me how much energy, because there's not a huge amount of, I found this during pregnancy, there's no real data on how much weight gain a twin mum should, or, there's a lot of data out there.
It depends on how much you weighed before. There's a lot of variables.
But with twin mums, it's like, and some.
Yeah.
Let's follow the guidance for a singleton and some. And that's not great for someone with an eating disorder, because you, as much as you think you get pregnant and you think, oh, the eating disorder is going to out the window because you want to do the best for your children, it doesn't. You're still conscious about weight gain, and you feel guilty about that, because I was simultaneously terrified my babies weren't growing, to the point where I was paralyzed before. I was having scans every 2 weeks, and I literally, days before, I used to just get paralyzed. I was so terrified that my babies weren't growing. They were really growing. Then when I was told my babies were growing, my eating disorder was saying, oh, you don't need to eat so much, your baby's growing. And then I was gaining weight, but I didn't think I was eating a huge amount. But then people were telling me, oh, you're growing, your babies are growing. But I didn't think I was putting on that much weight, and I was not feeling well at all. I was very low in energy. I was kind of on a trajectory for a singleton pregnancy, and I was a twin pregnancy, obviously, but they were like, oh, it doesn't matter as long as you're putting on some weight and the baby's doing fine, it'll be fine. And I just knew that my body was probably eating itself away.
Yes.
And it wasn't going to look good after pregnancy, but my body was doing everything it could just to keep these babies safe. So was retaining weight and was growing them, but everything was going into my babies. But as long as my babies were okay, that kind of is all that mattered.
Yeah.
So I felt like I was a bit of a fraud during pregnancy because I did tell people from the word go about my history. And I felt it then was almost like I did get people to talk to, but it was very much like the concern was on the babies and I was doing okay, and therefore no one could really help me because it was all going
what are
okay.
they going to do? Yeah, if the babies are okay and they look at you and then you nobody's going to know the trauma that's going on inside. They're only, during any pregnancy, they're going to just focus on the babies and make sure that they're healthy. And then that's it. They're going to assume that you're taking care of yourself. And I really hate that they dismissed so many things that you were experiencing because of your eating disorder. But when you were pregnant and you were watching your body grow, did you have any sense of pride that you were able to do this?
Yes. Yeah, I did. And I also really hated people telling me that my bump was small, which is quite strange because on the one hand, I did find the weight gain difficult. On the other hand, when people were saying, oh, you're tiny, your bump's really small, you're really neat, I was thinking, but that means that my twins are small. That means that I'm not doing a good enough job. That means I'm, putting them in danger. And, I just hated people's license that, people's like feeling that they could just comment on your body.
Absolutely.
It was no, I wanted people to tell me that my bump was, lots of people don't like their bump being commented on and don't like people telling you've got your bump's great. I loved it, but I also hated the fact that people suddenly felt okay to just comment on your body as if it wasn't yours. Like it's just, it's not okay. It's not okay to tell people whether they, whether they look big or small or are growing or not.
Isn't it interesting?
It just felt very judged.
It really is. It's fascinating to me that people lose all sense of like social norms when they see a pregnant person. And once they hear that it's twins, they feel like they have a right to ask you even questions. Is it IVF? Did you breastfeed? Right? They like want to get all into your business and you're like, buddy, like step back. Like, yeah.
But then conversely, as soon as you give birth, everyone, some people quite close to me, I found this very difficult. The first thing they say to you is, oh, you're looking really well. You've lost the baby weight. And you're thinking, is that the most important thing to you, looking at me? I know that they're just trying to be polite, and I know that it's people's kind of default and they think it's a compliment.
Yeah.
But also it does reinforce that feeling that like appearance and getting back to what you were is so important to society. As much as you can tell yourself, oh, what you look like doesn't matter, I'm a mum now, it's what I do for my children that matters. When people make comments like that, like, oh, you're looking well, or oh, you've lost the baby weight, you think, well, clearly it does matter. Clearly that's how people do judge me. People do.
What do you wish people said to you? What do you wish that they what if they could if you could change the words in their mouth, what do you wish they said to you?
Nothing about my parents. Like, oh, your baby's, talk, carry on the trajectory of, oh, wow, talk about your babies. I know, obviously you don't want to be, that there is this whole thing about the mums being ignored and the babies being focused on, but I would rather that than people first commenting on my appearance. But, why can't you say something like, oh, I love your dress, or your hair's looking great, or, oh, you're wearing some makeup today, or I know that's
how are you feeling? How about that?
How are you
feeling is always good.
Or just, and I just think, and half the time you think, well, I'm not looking that well. Like, I'm really deathly tired. Like, it's just really difficult. There's just so many other things that people could say that just aren't about your appearance and don't make you feel like, that is your role as a mum, is to be everything all at once and perfect. Because you're not, and it's okay to not be perfect. It's
sides, right? There's no, the grass is always greener, right? Because then you have people that are on the heavier side that are me, right? And still an eating disorder if I'm this overweight, to be very honest. And I don't really talk about my weight on Twiniversity, but at the same time, when I was pregnant, people would be like, "Oh, you're pregnant?" Because I was just always so big. So they would be like, "Oh, you are?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, I am." That's always great. So it's 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 just so interesting how people feel that they have such a liberty to say whatever they want. But I blame ignorance most of the time. I think that that's what kind of gets everybody through the day, is because like all
Yeah,
twin moms go through it. And of course, you're going to definitely be in a more heightened state, and depending on your own mental health, you're going to be in your own place in your own head. So when people say things to you, you're going to hear them your own way. But people still have no freaking filter. They just say
no.
whatever they want, whenever they want, and they don't think old, young, middle-aged. It just doesn't matter, and they just don't think. It's just stupid in plain English, and it frustrates me and all other twin families, because it's especially to when you had IVF. If you've been through a 10-year journey to get pregnant, do you really want somebody asking you about that on the subway here? You know what I mean? Like it's just crazy. But when you were pregnant and you were watching your body grow, when you knew that your body had to be healthy enough to grow and grow these two babies, were you getting support? Were you getting like, were you seeing a social worker or therapist? Like, what type of ongoing therapy or help? Because it doesn't even have to be from a certified somebody,
Yeah.
it could be a family member or your husband. But what type of ongoing assistance are you getting to get you through those challenges, whether they're real challenges that, you know, a doctor may say to you, or they're in your mind, but it's still a challenge nonetheless? So how do
To be
you?
honest with you, so I was referred to an eating disorder service, but to be honest with you, given as I said, I had a massive relapse afterwards, and I was under the same service and I had the same support around me, and I went down and down and down and down and down and down to a very, very, very dangerous place where I was almost sectioned, and my babies were almost taken away from me, and that's and they threatened to do that, and that was not helpful. So on the one hand, I asked for support. I was very I wanted to get better. I wanted to be the best mum I could, and so I said, hands up. I thought long and hard about it, but I thought I'm going to be transparent because I want to be looked after and I want to get all the support I can.
Mhm.
So I was referred to a consultant who um, was, referred me before they knew it was twins, was going to refer me for extra growth scans, just checking in on me. And I was referred to an eating disorder service where I was able to get someone to talk to every week. But that actually ended up, I feel, backfiring on me, because it's all very well when the babies aren't here, because there's no, if you starved yourself and the babies didn't, something happened to the babies, like you're not going to be prosecuted or nothing, they're not going to be liable for anything. That's just a very sad story. But once there are babies in the picture, the whole attitude changes. And suddenly I was a victim of the help I sought. And suddenly I was being honest to people. I was saying, look, I'm not eating enough. I'm feeling faint. I was really being, transparent about how I don't necessarily want to be here anymore and how much I was struggling. And the next week, I had a remote phone call set up with my husband saying, we're referring you to social services.
Mm,
We don't think you're a fit mother.
mm.
And and then I was, being told I had to come in every week to be weighed, to be medically checked, which is impossible with twins.
Of
And
course.
if I missed an appointment, even though I was just given appointments and I wasn't able to change them, um, I just had to come in at that time. I was put in a blacklist, and then I went away on holiday for a week, and I just didn't turn up for the appointment because I couldn't. And they rang the police, and they sent police around to my house, or threatened to check my well-being. And they wanted to know my address, where I was, because they needed to check in on me to check that the twins were safe. And it was the most terrifying experience of my life,
Of
because
course.
I was with family, I was safe, I was doing well. I wasn't a danger to my children, and everyone who saw me
Yeah.
knew that.
Yeah.
And when we had a call from social services and they talked to me, they immediately said, we're not even proceeding with this case because you're clearly a fit mother.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous. It's been totally and
Yes.
utterly out of proportion. And it's just, I wish people had more of an understanding of eating. Just, this is
Of
an eating disorder
course.
service as well,
Yeah.
about eating disorders, and
They,
there's,
out of everybody,
that
out
sentence
of
is not
everybody, they should
helpful.
understand. Were they worried
Yeah.
that you were going to starve the children, or that you were going to starve yourself to death? Like, what was the concern?
the concern that I wasn't safe. They were making like stupid allegations like, oh, you'll faint when you're holding your child,
Hmm.
and you won't be, you're not eating enough to be a good mum, is
Okay.
essentially what they were saying.
Okay.
And that was not true. I was eating a good amount. I was just breastfeeding and exhausting my body,
Yeah.
but I was still eating enough. I was still safe. I was okay to look after my children. I just needed help. And I suppose my roundabout way of saying this was, the only person that helped me during pregnancy was me. And that's how I was able to keep well, because I was motivated. And the reason why I asked for help, because I was pretty sure that during pregnancy I'd be okay.
Yeah.
There were times when I was worried, but I was worried that once I wasn't pregnant, I wouldn't have a reason
Yeah.
to. I mean, I kind of knew that my babies would be my reason, but I also knew that suddenly I brought these babies into the world. Once my breastfeeding journey and my physical carrying them was over, what was the motivation for keeping my body healthy?
Hmm.
As you know, as I didn't necessarily not want to be here or feel like they would be better off without me, although that's gone through my mind. And I'm in a much better place now, by the way. It was more, what motivation is there to keep me healthy? Because I truly believed, especially in some of my darker moments, that's the eating sort of tricks you, that you can do both.
Yeah.
And whereas I knew rationally that when I was growing the babies, I couldn't really do both. And so I did let go a little bit.
Okay.
And the weight gain was going to happen. So my eating disorder was like, well, it's going to happen, so it may as well, let's just let it happen. Um, and there was a reason why the scales were going up, because I was growing two babies in me. So
Of
as much
course.
as I wanted to
Of
know
course.
exactly how much was attributed to the placenta and how much was attributed to the baby, and I did all this research about how much weight was baby and all that extra
Versus
stuff and how
you.
much weight was
Yes.
extra fat. But then my eating disorder was like, well, you know, afterwards you'll be able to lose the weight if you want to.
Hmm.
Obviously, I was conscious. I didn't want to put on more weight, but there was always something in my head that was like, you know, you, I knew what I was worried about was my mental state during pregnancy, because I knew that it was a temporary thing, because I already had these thoughts that, if you've put on excess weight, then you will be able to lose it.
Yeah.
And that's where I knew that I wasn't fully recovered, because I was treating it as a temporary respite almost. Not even that. I wasn't even treating it as a temporary respite, because I was holding on to I was doing a lot of exercise. I was, restricting my food, but I was relaxing myself enough to put on weight and grow my baby safely. But I
Okay.
was in a state of, I was, the eating disorder was still there. It
Hmm.
was just not quite as severe.
Yeah.
Whereas once the babies came, I was worried that it would kick in to my detriment of my health. Um, but I wasn't able to think rationally that, you need to be well to be a good mum.
Of
Like,
course.
and being a good mum is really, I've noticed that, if I'm not eating enough and I'm low in energy, I'm not smiling around my babies. And then as soon as I smile at them or I'm in a better mood, they react. And that's just amazing to see. And, you don't see how, you don't realize what kind of vibes that you're giving off and how much these babies pick up. And actually, it's not just about being there physically
Hmm.
in whatever state. And they do know that you're their mum and
Of
you are
course.
important for them, and you're there. It's important that
You're their
you
world.
know
You were
you're their
literally
world,
their world.
and you do deserve, there is no what better person and no more deserving person to look after them than you. And yes, there have been times where I've thought they'd be better off just with my husband, because and there's lots of people that would care for them and bring them up, but it's not just about feeding them and clothing them and cuddling them. It's about giving them interaction and love and fun. And I want to be the best version of myself for them. But that is very difficult to, if you don't really love yourself and if you don't have confidence in yourself, it's very
Yeah.
difficult to own that and for that to be your motivation to get better.
Yeah.
And I'm really struggling with that at the moment, because I feel like I'm really, whereas during pregnancy it was much more like black and white, like you need to eat to feed your babies, you need to rest for your babies. Now it's like I can function as a mother with a, in a energy deprived state. Of course I can, but do I want to? And is that the best for my children?
Do
No.
you, do you
But
ever think
then,
about your growing up with your mother And do you ever
Yes.
think about that and say, I'm redoing this? Are you worried about them
Yeah,
having the
definitely.
same concern about taking care of you the way that you were about taking care of your mom?
That's exactly true. And that's what terrifies me. But the eating disorder can be so strong that it can almost tell you that you should be able to do both. You should be able to tread a line where you can control your weight and you can exercise lots, but you can also be this amazing mum. You can be super fun. You can essentially be perfect at both things, and you can't be good at your eating disorder and be a good mum.
Yeah.
Like, you just can't. And so you have to let go and not be perfect in one of those realms. And it's really difficult if you're in the grips of an eating disorder to accept that you're going to be a good mum, because you don't believe you'll be a good mum. The eating disorder is the only thing that you're good at, and is what you get your value from. It's how you communicate. It's how you
Mhm.
get your self-worth. It's how you feel like you're in control when things are out of control. It's how you numb your worries. It's how you basically get through the day,
Yeah.
and it's how you get your self-worth,
Yeah.
and it's how you value yourself, and it's part of your identity. Um, Being the sporty one, the thin one, um, it and it's super scary to go, I'm going to relax the eating disorder, I'm going to throw myself into being a mum, because that comes with, there's so much mum guilt out there
Of
aside from having
course.
an eating
Of
disorder.
course.
Just
I can't
the fact
imagine.
that my husband gets up in the morning and feeds the babies before going to work so that I can go out for a walk and walk the dog, just have some of my own time. Every day I wake up and I'm super guilty about that, because I'm like, he's going to work and he's doing that for me, but he flips it around and says, but I want to spend some time with my babies.
Of
Like,
course.
what's the point of having
And
babies if
one thing that we talk a lot about at Twiniversity, and for the record, I have literally like no mental health training, but I've spoken to thousands of moms. And one thing that I read once that has really resonated with me is that we really do, whether it's you or anybody out there that's listening, when you feel bad about not having time with your kids, you have to realize that you are not relaxing, you are recovering, and you're not, and you have so much to recover from. And so look, you have the delivery, like just literally put your eating disorder on the side. A twin mom with 10-month-old twinnies is going through some stuff that is
yeah.
tough. And so you have the added layer of having this significant eating disorder, and that's a lot, mama. So anytime you start feeling guilty, I would pray that you hear my voice saying you aren't relaxing, you're recovering, and recovering
Yeah.
just from whatever happened last night or the train ride that you had in. Like, there's so many things that happen throughout our day that we do need to kind of digest, and your brain has to process them. So whether we want to acknowledge it or not, we still need a minute to process so that we can be a better version of ourselves with or without an eating disorder. And you have all this extra stress. When it comes to the eating disorder treatment, do you guys ever talk about like that you aren't your thoughts? Like, that's always like something that's I know said a lot here in the mental health universe. And when you have, very negative, scary thoughts, and you could easily let them consume you. But if you are able to, and once again, I have literally no right speaking about this, but just from some of my own personal family stuff, is that separating yourself from your thoughts and realizing that that's not you. That is, and I love the way that you refer to your eating disorder as that it's telling you, like it is a
Mm.
third party to this. So you know that you are separate from it. It's just there's times it seems that maybe it's stronger than you.
Yeah, I think that's the thing. I think it's trying to separate the two, but sometimes it feels like you're possessed.
Mm-hmm.
And you do know, I think when you come to a state of wanting to recover, you you know that there's two of you. There's the eating disorder and there's you. I think when you're in denial, or if you're not in the place that you want to recover, it's sometimes harder to realize that. But
Absolutely.
once you come to the realization that there's two parts to you, there's Alex, who's not her eating disorder, and there's Alex, there's the eating disorder Alex. But sometimes it feels like, you can literally be absolutely exhausted, starving, hungry, and you literally cannot put food in your mouth. And that's really, really scary because you don't understand how or why. And then when it comes back to who helped you and everything, no one can. You can sit there till you're blue in the face and people can tell you you need to have 3 meals and 3 snacks and you're breastfeeding, so you need X amount of calories extra and this and that. You can sit and nod, but they can't make you do it.
No.
Or they could section you and feed you in a tube, but that's not sustainable. You have got to get to that place in your head. And to get to that place in your head, you've got to believe in yourself. You've got to believe you're enough, and you've got to be able to take care of yourself, and you've got to be able to, after an awful night last night and after a train journey, it was delayed. My immediate reaction today is to restrict food, and it's to do lots and lots of exercise because I felt very out of control. It all went a bit wrong. I was questioning whether I dealt with it okay. I'm very sleep deprived, and my immediate reaction isn't have a nap. What people are saying to you, no, it's fine, we'll take care of the babies, have a nap, or let's go for pastries this morning. And we did, and it was great. But I felt guilty about it because my natural reaction is not to comfort myself, it's to punish myself almost. I somehow feel the need to punish myself for what happened last night, and I don't know why, because none of it was in my control. I was on a train. Everything I did was the right decision. Sometimes things go wrong. Sometimes trains get delayed, and babies don't go to sleep when you get to your sister's house like they did last time. But that wasn't my fault, and if it was, I'm human. But there's no need to punish myself. But it's such a default reaction that the harder things are and the worse things are, the more I punish myself, which then makes me, I'm running on empty. And it's very difficult to fuel yourself, to say, I need to fuel myself to get through this day because of my babies, and I deserve to have a bit of a reset, and I deserve to have a bit of relaxation. I deserve to eat some nice food today, because you feel not deserving of that. You feel like you need to punish yourself, and you feel like you need to almost get back some control. And that my way of doing that is, it's almost a default state now. It's almost like irrational. When I actually sit back and think about it, I'm like, it doesn't make any sense, but it's all I know. So
you've programmed your brain to think one way the majority of your life, and just in the 10 months plus pregnancy, you can't undo it.
And I think at the moment, what I'm trying to do is, one of the things I've been really trying to do is to go against my thoughts and think, right, the only way I'm going to kick this is by doing the opposite, is by actions. And no one else can help me with those actions. I have to do it. And so I almost have to go against the thoughts and see what happens. And I've had some success with that. If I'm questioning things, then go, well, I'll do it anyway and see what happens. And often it's not as scary, and often I feel so much better. Actually, going for that run, I feel almost a bit guilty about it. And I feel like, great, it's just perpetuating the issue. And actually, it may be really hard, and it may totally and utterly floor me for that day. And I may be very weepy, and I may be very upset, and I might find that day really difficult. But ultimately, it's a step closer in the journey, and I feel better in myself because I feel like I've challenged it. And I feel like it's a step forward to recovery. Whereas if you just stick with the status quo, then it's exhausting, because all you can see ahead is a future of that, and that's not what you want. No, I want to be able to sit at home and have lazy mornings with my children, and when they start walking and toddling, not have to think I need to walk 10 kilometers. Like, come on, and drag them along and stick them in buggies to make them walk faster because I have to do a certain amount of exercise. I want to be able to stand in a park and watch them go on the swings, rather than think, oh, I could have been walking for that hour. But you're eating, I'm only going to get to that stage by trying that out now, and actually breaking the cycle of behavior, and not being in that mindset where it is just
Well, I'm worried about you. I got to be honest with you. I'm worried about you because those boys can't live without you. And they, no matter what you say, and you could convince yourself that they'll be better off. And I understand where you're coming from. And you could say to yourself that it's just going to be easier. Like, why are they going to go through what I went through with my mother? But that doesn't have to be. The good news is that you do have the power to change anything that you want. Literally anything you
Yeah,
want. You have to find a way to be stronger than the other Alex.
yeah,
So
definitely.
which is tough. And I'm telling you, like, once they start running, it's going to get tougher. And there's a piece of me that's just hoping that you get so distracted with what's happening with the babies, because one of the, I guess, good things about twinnies is that you do get so busy. You're like, did I wash today? Did I brush my teeth? You don't realize all the things that you didn't do because you've just been making these two humans survive. But I'm
Yeah,
worried that you are going to take those things that the babies do that go wrong and then put it on yourself. Like, if they have a bad night, is it something that you did? When in reality, I know, as sitting in my seat, there's nothing you could do sometimes.
yeah,
You know what I mean? They're just going to lose their crap and freak out. Like, I worry about you blaming yourself for very typical mom things and then having to, regain control, because a big part of twinnies is that you are very much out of control. With
yeah,
your pregnancy, you're very much out of control. With the delivery, you were out of control. And now basically they're two little humans that have free will. Like, whether we want to admit it or not, like, once they realize it, it sucks because then once they realize that they can run in different directions, and I worry that you, like, aren't going to eat. And, like, honestly, I'm like worried that you're going to die in plain English, as other people have, with your disease. And it really is a disease, whether people want to call it that or not.
mm,
Because if you could sit here and you could say there's two versions of me, that's tough. And it's really, I'm glad that you're so self-aware that you are not that there
yeah,
is another, that there is that other version of you. But at the same time, like, I know that the babies do need you, but they need the best version of you so that it stops here,
yeah.
so that they're
And I
not
mean, I'm
telling
starting,
their partner, oh, I had to take care of my mom for my whole life. And I remember,
yeah.
also, I think of, like, with them at 6 months, like, did you introduce solids? And do you ever say, like, how does that work? I know that a lot of moms, believe it or not, sustain their own life force by eating what, is left on the tray of kiddos. Like, how is that working with you? Like, is that something that you would do, eating when they eat, or, them learning how to have a meal and the social aspects of it? And, like, there's all that bonding time. Like, how is that working with you?
So I'm finding that aspect of it challenging, but I'm actually really, really proud. Like, so I was going to say, like, I am starting to actually process compliments from people. People telling me that, you've got twins and you're doing amazingly, and look how calm they are, and look how happy they are. And I actually am starting to be able to take back and step back and say, actually, like, I'm doing this, I've done this, like, actually, like, I've got this. And that's really nice. And something I am really proud of is actually how I'm enjoying feeding them. I'm actually really enjoying, like, it was really difficult to start with, where I felt like I was forced, like, they weren't wanting it, and there was so much wastage, and there still is a lot of wastage now, and that's something I really struggle with. And I struggle with trusting myself around food and worrying that I'll binge, and um almost like not wanting excess food around. And so having that extra meal time in the day where there's food which I'm worried I'll eat, but then feel guilty if I do eat it. And it's just this whole, you're adding double the amount of meal times, because I don't eat at the same time as them, because they eat at much earlier than I would. When you're feeding twins, I find it so difficult to feed both of them at once, let alone feed myself.
Of
So I do
course.
them separately. Um, and it's also to kind of teach myself that I can trust myself, like I can have the food on the plate and not, there's a certain amount, I don't want to be that person who doesn't let food touch my lips. Like, I want them to see me try a bit of this and try a bit of that. But I also want them to see me not panicked around food, and not, oh, there's food on the plate, therefore it must be thrown away because you might eat it, or, being weird about it. Like, it's okay to have stuff on the plate and not eat it.
Mhm.
Like, I want to learn that trust. So therefore, for me, it's important to have separate meal times for them, where I am okay with there being wastage and I don't have to finish it off, but I am also just trying bits out with them. But as they're starting to feed themselves, it's so rewarding to see them enjoying food and to experiment and to be really, putting all my effort into working out, how much, what kind of new food I can give them and how I can give them a balanced diet and how I can give them, I'm making everything myself. So I'm making I made hummus the other day and I'm making my purees myself. And I'm really trying to give them like the best nutritious diet. And, that makes me feel, it's made my transition from breastfeeding into looking after them easier because I'm feeling like that is on me. Like that I can be, I can make sure that they're getting looked after and being fed well. That I do have a role, I have a purpose, and I can
But
do
Alex,
that.
by you doing that, that means that you also could do that for you.
Yeah, that's the bizarre thing is that I feel like I am, and I'm so proud of them when they eat, and I'm so proud of them when they put on weight, and I get so anxious if they're not gaining, and if they're not eating. My heart leaps when they eat well, and I just think, oh my God, like how can I not feel like that's how my husband must feel towards me when he sees me eat. Like that's how my mum must feel. That's how my sister must feel.
Yep.
But I don't believe that. It's bizarre. Like
and I didn't mean that as judgment. I actually meant that as a very positive thing. Because if if you're capable of doing something for somebody else, you do have the capability of doing something for yourself. So whether you choose to or not is a different story, but the capability is there.
Yeah, and I think through feeding them and through learning to see how I feel towards them eating is starting to see food and nutrition and things in a different way. And I'm starting to see it as, it's not just about how you look. It's about
it's life. It's life. It's not
life.
entertainment. It's not a physicality. It's literally you eat to live. You do not. I mean, there's people who live to eat, right? And then there's people who eat to live. And so, soon enough, they're going to start trying to feed you. They're going to start to try to because they love you so much, they want to share with you, especially with their brother. How are you going to, did you ever think about that and how you're going to handle that? Are you going to say, no, not for mommy? Or are you going to allow them?
No, I'm definitely going to allow them because I think you've got to kind of work out this is something that I kind of constantly look at. What is recovery for me? What kind of, what do I see as recovered? How do I want to live my life? And I know that lots of people are happy living a life where they eat just enough to survive. They're a healthy weight, but they still have a lot of rules and they still have and they're quite happy saying no. And they don't, they're very, very strict around snacking. And, I don't want to be one of those people. I want to be able to snack. I want to be able to eat a little bit more and be uncomfortable. I want to be able to be, someone feed me, my boys feed me something, even though I've had a massive meal, and me not to say, oh, no, thank you very much. I want to be a little bit more relaxed around food so that they're not brought up to think of food as a means of control and food as a means of communicating and food as, and that mummy's super controlled and super strict. Food's just food. And if it's there, it's okay to eat it. Like, it doesn't really matter whether you're full or not. Like, as long as you're not, haven't got a medical condition that means you shouldn't be eating something. And as long as you're, doing a little bit of exercise and you're eating a balanced diet, the rest of it, I don't want to live my life ruled like that. So, and that kind of like starts with, my boys offering me something and I might not be hungry, but I will have a bite because why not?
And it's not the food. Like, they're not trying to force feed you. They're just trying to share and love you and, and be kind of that part of the team. I don't even know what to say. I want to just come and live with you and be like, okay, that's it. We're going to talk about breaks. But that's tough. And you do have people that are, that love you so much and that are taking care of you. And you're so lucky in that regard because you know that there are people that are going through what you're going through all by themselves. And their family has abandoned them thinking that, oh, we'll let them hit rock bottom, but rock bottom could be a grave. So
Yeah.
it's really great that you have a support system around you. I wish that there was more that was available to you without judgment, because it's so
Mm.
interesting, right? Like it's true. Like even the eating disorder clinics here, it's so food focused. And you would
Yeah.
think, like, if you had a drug addiction or an alcohol addiction, like you could live without that. And so the treatment for that and the recovery process for that is going to be a little bit easier. But when you have an issue where you're weaponizing food for both good or bad, you can't get away from that. You need that in order to live. And that's
Yeah.
got to be so challenging. And I'm really sorry that this is something that you've dealt with your whole life. And I don't know if it helps, but I'm sorry that you've been through this. But I believe that you are an amazing mother, not can be an amazing mother. I think you are an amazing mother. And the fact that you're willing to share your journey with everybody, it's so it's so liberating. And I hope that, like, I have chills thinking about it, but like, I hope that you realize that you are able to make such a big impact. And, we're not a tiny little community. And I joke a lot in other podcasts that I'm like, to our 2 listeners that it's, or 6, my mom is listening today, but we do have like a massive worldwide community. And this is a struggle that you are not the only one that is going through. Nobody wants to freaking talk about it, but anybody that has something outside of the norm, it's difficult for them to accept. There's going to be different severities of everything that somebody's going through, but I want to make sure that you are always very present, and that's a totally overused term as I roll my eyes for those of you that are listening. It's to try to be in the moment and realize that you, Alex, are the one that's always in control, and that twin mama Alex is always in control, and boy mom Alex is always in control, and great sister and great wife and great daughter. Like, that's the one that no matter what the other Alex is telling you, you just need to shut her up, because she does not know shit in plain English. Now I have to put an E on this episode because I just said that, but she doesn't know anything, and she's not you, and you're in there, and like you really want to do this. And I worry about the boys, but I know that if your focus always stays on the betterment of them, that your relationship with food will change, because you'll see that they do need it to live.
Yeah.
They do need it to grow, and they need it for brain development and bone development and muscle development, and that they are just little versions of you. And so if they
Yeah.
need that, the hummus, your
So
brain
do
needs
I.
just
Yeah.
as much of the hummus as the babies do. So they're just
Yeah.
teeny tiny versions of you. And you're also still recovering from pregnancy. It takes your body a long time to kind of come back to quote unquote normal, because we go through such like an advanced state of physicality that it's not like, oh, let's snap back in 2 minutes. Whether it's mental, physical, both, it really does take a while to recover from having twins. And at 10 and a half months, you're really still not even there yet. So your
Yeah,
body's still
definitely.
experiencing a challenge. And I'm so
And I
proud
think
of you.
it's, yeah. And I think I think it's really important. So often people will come on and speak about their story, having recovered, in inverted commas, or having gone through their journey. And I think it's really important to speak about it, and be vulnerable,
Yeah.
and to hold my hands up and say, like, I'm not better, or I'm struggling,
Mhm.
but I've got this. I'm in a place that I know I'm very positive, and I'm learning things, and I've got. But I do think, you don't necessarily always want to hear about the success stories. You want to be able to hear about the reality,
Yeah.
and I think that's really, really important.
Honestly, I really, really appreciate this. And seriously, I hope that people are a little bit more sensitive to the way that they talk to new parents, regardless, because you never know what somebody's going through. But B, that they realize that, nobody's winning. None of us are winning, right? We all have something, whether we choose to wear it as a badge and let everybody know about the something that we're going through, but everybody's got a struggle. And the struggle could be super severe or something so minor, but even if it's minor to that person, it could be so severe. We never know. I
Yeah,
always say somebody's bad is their worst. It's their bad. We
yeah,
could be like, oh, whatever, she's got triplets. It's fine. She made it to, 36 weeks, but to that person, it could be very traumatizing, and you never really know. And I genuinely, like, seriously, I really appreciate you just telling us where you are. And I hope you allow us to follow up with you
Yeah,
and,
definitely.
see how things are going. And then always stay in touch with me or anybody and the Twiniversity team just to see if there's anything that we could do for you. But if you know of any resources, like when you get to the point where you're like, okay, I didn't win the war, but like I've got a few battles under my belt. What you do, you have quite a few battles under your belt already. You've already really overcome a lot. And I
Yeah.
hope that you're able to kind of absorb that and realize that this did not have to go the way that it did. And you do not have to be as healthy and capable of taking your kids on a train, whether the train was messed up or not. You could be in a hospital on a feeding tube being force fed by, the state right now. Like there's things that could be happening, but you won all that. You already did all.
Yeah,
You're already better than that.
definitely.
You're really doing unbelievable. And I know it's going to get better. And I really do have faith in you. And I don't say that to put pressure on you, but I say that in all sincerity. I mean, twin parenting is hard and you have an extra level of difficulty, but I know you're going to level up. And whatever that looks like to you, every time the sun rises is a new opportunity to fix what was wrong yesterday. We all have that.
Definitely.
So
Definitely.
we got plenty of sunrises in the future. Thank you. And they're all going to be fantastic. And the fact that you have Oscar and Felix literally made my day. And I can't wait for you to go Google The Odd Couple and see
Definitely going to.
what I'm
It's gonna be
talking
epic.
about. Oh, it's Oscar, I believe, is like a hot mess and he's like so sloppy.
Oh,
This is like OCD, everything in its place.
oh, that's so funny because they're like the opposite. They're like the switch it around. Like I think Oscar's more like, not that I can tell at 10.5 months, but I get the feeling that like Felix is the more like laid back, chilled, like
Yeah.
slightly more, whereas Oscar's a bit more like intense and a bit more OCD. Or yeah.
Listen,
But
God bless
we'll
twins.
see.
It's two kids with the same birthday. That's really how we have to parent them. But Alex, like
Exactly.
honestly, like thank you so much for joining us today and for really sharing your story.
No worries. Thanks for having me.
And for those of you that are out there in the podcast video world, wherever you're seeing this, we're going to put some links to eating disorder clinics in the United States and some resources that are available for you. We definitely want to make sure that you have some, whether you know them or not. Whether we'd rather just err on the side of caution because we never want you to feel like you are by yourself, and we always want you to know there is support that's available. And remember that we're here at Twiniversity, and we have our monthly meeting every second Tuesday at 1:30 Eastern time, New York time. And you could come on and you could bring anything from light little fluffy topics to heavy duty topics. If there's something that you're going through that you believe that our twin parenting community could help you with, we would love to try because we are only stronger together. Each one of us, we might not win as an independent person, but as a team, we'll get there. So if you need anything from me or the rest of the Twiniversity team, you could email us at community@Twiniversity, or you could send us a direct message on any social platform. We're just at twiniversity.com. And thank you so much for listening as always. And I'm so appreciative to all of our guests that we have on our podcasts and our videos, because it just goes to show you we make up a lot of different families have stories to tell, but at the end of the day, we really are all twin families, and we all have that struggle in common, but some of us have a little bit more. So I hope you think about what's going on, and remember, you are not relaxing, you are recovering. So until next time, guys, see you later, alligators. Thanks for listening.